And just like that, guys, we are back with another video on TPN TV. Just a quick message at the start of this video to tell you that the black 991 that you're going to see in this video is actually for sale now. It's not under my ownership anymore. If you want to buy that car, if you're interested in buying that car, click the link in the description below. Go to Dove House Motor Company. They have that car currently for sale. That car has now been replaced with the red Targa 991 GTS, which I explained about in my last video. So just to basically let you know that I no longer have the black 991 in this video, but I have replaced it with a different 991. Roll tapes. It's a question that I've been asked many times. Which car do I prefer between my 997 and my 991? Now, seeing as I have both of these cars, I might be semi-qualified to answer this question. But it is important to remember though that there is no right or wrong answer. It's very subjective and it all depends on the individual. Now, I actually made a video on this about 4 years ago, and at the time my answer was that I preferred the Porsche 997. But I'm a little bit older now, I'm nearly 40. How did that happen? Probably my tastes have probably matured just that little bit more. So it'll be interesting to revisit this subject to see how I feel 4 years later as to whether I prefer the 991 or the 997. Oh, before we do this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you don't miss anything. You can also follow me on Instagram if you want to see more of these cars on a daily basis. So I think we'll get into the 997 first and we'll alternate between the two cars as we go through the video. Okay, so I would ask you to watch this video with an open mind because it's really just going to be a generalization. There are way too many variants and different models of these cars to go into absolute deep specifics. So as I say, it's going to be quite a generalization. So the first thing we're going to look at is the looks of the car. For me, the 997 is the perfect looking 911. It's smaller than the 992, the 991, but obviously it's bigger than the 996, 983s, 964s, etc. But I think the proportions on this are absolutely perfect. It does, however, look a little bit dated when you're putting it next to, say, a 991 or a 992. For the 991, it still looks modern, it looks sexy, it looks sleek. Put it next to the 997, it looks more up to date. It doesn't look too out of date when you put it next to the 992. When it comes to performance for the 997, we've got a 350 brake horsepower engine, which produces 295 foot-pounds of torque. 0 to 60 time in this car is 5.3 seconds. Now, performance in the 991, we've got 400 brake horsepower, 325 foot-pounds of torque, and a 0 to 60 time of 4.3 seconds. And you know what? This car really does feel a lot quicker, probably because of the PDK and also the fact that it just genuinely is a lot quicker. Now, in the 997, the exhaust sounds absolutely phenomenal. It's a sports exhaust we have on this car. And my God, I don't know how well the microphone's picking that up, but it is absolutely beautiful. Now, the exhaust on a 991 can be a little bit drony at times. It is the sports exhaust, but when putting your foot down at the right time, with an open road, oh wow, that just sounds phenomenal. It really does. But the interiors of these cars, the 997 really does just feel that little bit more sporty, that little bit more compact. Yes, I do agree that the center console area does look a little bit dated now, but that doesn't take anything away from the performance of the car. These seats are almost like bucket seats, they're sports seats, and they hug you really well. A very sporty feel to the steering wheel, and altogether it's a lovely place to be. The interior of the 991 is beautifully designed. It looks modern, it feels modern, but the one problem I've got with it is that it just doesn't feel sporty enough. It feels and looks great for a GT car, but not for what I would class as, you know, a good old sports car. But hey, if it's in a daily driver, then yeah, it's perfect. when it comes to the basic running costs, the 997 has just gone up with regards to road tax or vehicle tax here in the UK. That's gone up to £600 per year. My yearly insurance for this car is also more than I thought actually. It's gone up to £650, so I will need to look at that in a bit more detail. And when it comes to MPG, well, let's have a look. 21.1, which is actually better than I thought. If you're doing anything above the 21s, then you're probably not driving it right. If you got below the 20s, then you're driving it the way it's supposed to be driven. On that subject, in the 991, it costs £340 to tax this car per year, in the UK that is, £450 for the insurance, and again, if you're getting above 20, then you're probably using it as a daily driver. If you're getting below 20, then you're probably using it like you're supposed to. And if you're interested in the cost to buy these cars right now, the 997 represents amazing value for money. You could probably pick one of these up for around about £20,000. I think I paid £32,500 for this car, but it's probably worth about £5,000 more if I was to sell it right now. Prices are rising, dealers will confirm this, so yeah, I would say this probably would sell for in the region of about £38,000 right now. I would sell it with the aero kit back on though. 997s had come down in price, but because of the whole pandemic, the prices are starting to go up again. And over the last 6 months, I would say prices of these cars have risen at about £5,000. So although you can probably buy one where you could have previously bought one maybe high 30s, I would say the 991s you're now looking sort of mid 40s up to about 50 grand. So what about how the car makes you feel? Well, the 997 to me just feels like an absolute sports car. The seats hug you tight, the steering wheel is thick, the response from the car is exciting, it makes you feel alive, it makes your heart pump just that little bit faster when driving the 997. For the 991, it is trying, it's really trying, but just something seems like it's missing. It's more of a stylish GT car, and it doesn't feel enough like a sports car for me. It could be the spec of the car, could be the fact that it has the Billy Basic seats, it doesn't have the Sport Plus, doesn't have Sport Chrono. So for that reason, I would say it doesn't really get my heart pumping as much. It doesn't really make me feel like I'm in a sort of thoroughbred Porsche 911, 911s of old. It just feels like I'm in a more of a muted, I've got a bit of a muted sensation going on. And it's something that's dying to just jump out of it, but like I say, I think it's probably the spec of the car. So what type of situation would I drive the 997 in? Well, there's no right or wrong answer for this again, but for me the 997 is the perfect car to take on a track day, go out on spirited runs, go out on club runs, you know, putting your foot down into those twisty curves on a Sunday morning when absolutely nobody else is on the roads. That's where these cars really come into their own, but there's nothing to stop you from, you know, daily driving one of these. I'd prefer a PDK or a Tiptronic if I was going to daily drive it, but for the aforementioned reasons, I would always prefer the manual gearbox. For the 991, yeah, you can do exactly the same, but I think personally it lends itself more to being a daily driver, going out to a cafe, restaurant with your friends, with your family members, doing a bit of shopping, having a bit of lunch. and looking good in the process, parking it up outside of the cafe, restaurant, have some lunch, and you know, just on a really nice sunny day, having a good time out with your wife or whatever. What about problems with the 997? The 997 has had a few well-documented problems, mainly the IMS bearing, the bore scoring, and the shifter cable snapping. So be aware of those. Luckily, I haven't had any of those issues on this 997. Thankfully for the 991, in fact, none of those IMS bore score or shifter cables issues are even present. Now, that doesn't mean that this car doesn't have its problems, but they are nowhere near as catastrophic as the problems with the 997. So there's a few questions which I've set myself in certain situations of which I would prefer in a certain situation, the 997 or the 991. So which of these cars would I prefer to take to a car show? Well, I think I would take my 997 to a car show. What about a wedding? I would probably prefer to take the 991 to a wedding. What about lunch out with your partner or your kids or something, or your friends? I think I'd probably take the 991 out for lunch. What about a track day? Well, I think we'd be splitting hairs. I think both cars would be really good on track. This car, because it feels more like a sports car, the 991 will be a little bit quicker. Of course, my 991 is a rear-wheel drive. This is a four-wheel drive. Which one would I daily drive? It would be the 991. Which one would I do the weekly shopping? Again, it would be the 991. So come on, which one do you prefer? Which one do I prefer? It's a really tricky one because, well, you know, these cars, they are sports cars. So I guess you have to ask the question, which car feels more like a sports car? And I would say it's the 997, which looks more like a sports car. The 991 just feels like more of a nice daily driver, more of a GT car. But when I say GT car, I don't mean GT3, GTS, GT3 RS. I mean in the sense of like a Grand Tourer. You know, it's a comfortable car to go and wallop out 500 miles or whatever. You know, let's face it, I'm nearly 40 years old, and the thought of having a really stylish, nice, comfortable daily driver, and you know, a car to go out and do a bit of shopping, have a bit of lunch in, and look good in, well, it's honestly right up my street. It really, really is. And you know, my answer might be a little bit different if we were talking about GT cars like the GTS cars or the GT3s, the GT3 RSs. But in this case, we're not. We're talking about the Carreras and the Carrera S's. So with that in mind, the triumphant car is the Porsche 997 again. Oh man. It's not that the 991 is a bad car. Far from it, in fact. It's a bloody brilliant car. It's just, for me, at this time of my life, I'm still feeling the 997 is best for me and my needs when it comes to the Carrera formats. It might be a different kettle of fish entirely if we're talking about the GTS, the GT3s or GT3 RSs. I don't know because I've never been in that situation, but I'll do my best to get in those cars and do some sort of review at some point. If you're interested in seeing more hints, tips, reviews and guides on this channel, then by all means hit that subscribe button, click the bell so you don't miss anything. And of course, if you want to see more of these cars on a daily basis, then hit that button for Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram, and we'll do daily posts on there as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.